The rhythm of healing, the octaves method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at a play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The octaves method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. I am KJ Alexander here with my co-host, Tonya Octave, and today we have a lot of important information to dive into. But before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and let Tonya tell a little bit more about herself and what this podcast is about.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tonya Octave, and we are going into Season 5 of Trauma and Social Work Podcasts, where we will be discussing and diving deep into my book called Heal the Mind, 7 Strategies Towards Mental Wellness, Happiness, and Success, Exploring Trauma, Mental Wellness, and Ways to Live a More Balanced Life. And before we begin, just a simple reminder that this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended for medical, psychological, mental health, or legal advice. Although I'm a licensed professional, this is not a formal type of treatment. We may talk about things like hypnosis and meditation and things that we would do in a therapeutic, from a therapeutic perspective, but it's not a form of treatment. For individual questions about your wellness, your happiness, and your success, please seek out a professional. And if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, do call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.
Great, awesome. That was amazing. So with that being said, I want to make sure I tell the audience, if you haven't already, follow this page on Spotify, YouTube, and any other platforms we post episodes on. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming episodes in the future. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. This is episode 15 of the Trauma and Social Work Podcast, and my name is KJ Alexander, joined once again with Tonya Octave. And today we're continuing our deep dive series into the Heal Thy Mind book. And we're going to be picking up where we left off last episode, speaking on self-care and the benefits of having a good self-care routine. So I want to go ahead and hand it off to Tonya if there's anything you would like to share at this time.
Well, thank you, KJ. I'll go ahead and I'll start by just continuing to read on page 40 in the section entitled Self Care. So last week, just to recap, we kind of explored the different age groups and the recommended amount of hours of sleep and how sometimes the mind may want to resist that because it wants to stay in this homeostasis space, even though the homeostasis space may not be a healthy space to be in. And so it continues by quality sleep is not so much about the length of time as it is about feeling rested when you wake up. Ideally, you should be able to drift off to sleep in about 30 minutes. And that's one of the things. It's usually recommended not to have things like your TV or other electronic devices in your bedroom. Ideally, that is part of the routine that you go into the bedroom, that you are in a subconscious way setting your body up, setting your mind up, setting the spirit up for relaxation or activation. Because when the body can slow down, then other things like the mental capacity and the spiritual intuitiveness can be increased. And so the idea is for those 30 minutes, like once you're brushing your teeth, you're doing all your hygiene, you're bedding down, that you're preparing for this transition. And when you get into the bed, ideally you should be asleep within 30 minutes. Most people will report there's a lot of tossing and turning. It's difficulty getting to sleep. They will defer to the TV, to listening to music, some sort of sound. They will also report maybe tossing and turning, going to their phone because of difficulty with sleeping. And I think that should be a message to you to say, maybe I really need to look at a different sleep hygiene, because there are some significant things in terms of sleep that it can help improve. And so as it continues, however, if you're tossing and turning or frequently waking up in the middle of the night, or if you wake up feeling tired, you may not be getting enough quality sleep. And so that should be an indication. If you're not waking up refreshed, full of energy, your cortisol should be high in the morning to just give you that extra umph. If that's not happening, that should be an indication that you're off balance a little. And then it continues. Consuming alcohol or coffee can be a big issue affecting sleep quality. And one of the things is that's what we defer to when we wake up. Most people in the world pretty much it will have coffee in the morning, and it's a
Yeah.
stimulant, and it kind of helps activate those things. And so I'm not necessarily a proponent of taking things away, but I do like to add additional things. And so I'm coming out with an online cooking book, and one of the recipes in the online cooking book is your alternative to your coffee in the morning, where it could actually support adrenals and bring you to a state where you can still have high energy. And so, like today, one of the creations, usually I will use a nut milk base, an almond milk, oat milk, sometimes the oat milk, and I will put just a little bit of it in there. I will add my protein and then whatever kind of adaptogen I need. If I want to add something green, maybe like a wheatgrass. I always add a mushroom. So I always, in addition to the protein, will put in some type of mushroom, considering on what type of work I'm doing for the day, and a type of green. And then I will add other things like celery elm, if there's some digestive things. And then you kind of swirl it until it makes a paste. And then you can add hot water and then stir it after that. And you will get kind of a consistency like a little chocolate. Now, I didn't have any nut base today, so I did an orange juice. And usually those things are cold, and then it ends up making the whole cup cold. So I put a little bit of orange juice as I would with my nut milk. I heated it up a little bit, on the stove so that it would be warm, or let's say more towards room temperature, but not cold. Then I added the proteins, the adaptogens, the mushrooms, the green stuff, stirred it, then added hot water, stirred it again. And then now I have this beautiful drink that can be used instead of coffee, so that there are other options out there.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
this is an easy process once you start, but what could be some faster processes is the mushrooms coffees that are out there. They're even already pre filled with different adaptogens and mushrooms, maybe even some other essential vitamins and minerals. And so that may be, if you just are putting a pod in, you could put the pod in and get that. I would always say add at least a teaspoon of something green as well, because some of those don't come with green stuff. Then stir it. And then you pour it in your Starbucks cup or your coffee bean cup or whatever you use, so that you can still feel that you are
Yeah.
connecting to that attachment. If that's helpful for you, and you get in the car and you drive and you go to work, and now you've started your day off with something healthy that's going to support the adrenals, not something that's going to make you go up and then crash in a few hours. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I think about in terms of the morning. Now, I do know, some people are using herbal teas in the morning, and I also think that's great. You might even have some other suggestions in terms of what people use in the morning as alternatives to coffee, or like a Red Bull, something that is still toxic to the body. Do you have some suggestions?
Yeah. So for me personally, I don't really typically drink coffee in the morning. I may have coffee, in the afternoon just to kind of get through that second half of the day when needed, but I try to avoid it. Usually in the morning, I'll just stick to water. Um, Ideally warm water, but sometimes I'll do cold water. But as far as suggestions, I think it's really important to understand what's in these ingredients, because a lot of times people, they'll just, they'll go to the drive-through and order their favorite drink, and that's pretty much the end of it. But when we actually take time to look at, what's in these drinks and the ingredients, and then we have to also take into account what our bodies may be allergic to or react to in a certain way, because everyone reacts to sugar a little bit differently, and that may cause a lot of issues for you health wise. So I just think it's important to do your own research, understand what's in these drinks, and understand that you can even substitute some ingredients for other ingredients just to make it a little bit more suitable for yourself. I think that would help.
Okay. So maybe kind of just looking at other alternatives. And even though you made a good point, because what if you can get up in the morning and go about your day, but when you get to work, or around maybe noon or 1 o'clock, you start to feel that slump? Some of that may be related if you ate something.
Yeah.
Um, so for breakfast, if you had things that were um, carb enriched, like the American breakfast of pancakes, eggs,
Yeah.
bacon,
Biscuits.
I think stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's been so long, I don't even know what people have for breakfast.
Yeah, definitely.
But when you have those things, the body is using energy. And so let's say you ate that at 8 o'clock and you start to feel a slump around 1. Well, it makes sense. The cells used all the energy to process and break down, let's say, for example, the junk that maybe we put in our bodies, and then it led to a depletion. What should happen that is consistent with the circadian rhythm is when we awake in the morning, our cortisol should be high. And as we go through the day, it should be relatively kind of even. It should stay out. It should come down a little bit and stay out. And around, let's say, like that 3 or 4, we should get a little bit more of a bump. And then it'll start to slow down. And as it starts to slow down, our melatonin starts to rise.
So not
That
to cut you off real quick, just for people who may not know, what exactly is cortisol?
cortisol is the hormone that we have in our body that is released in high moments of stress. So it's the protective
Okay.
hormone. It's the hormone that's activated in times of trauma.
Okay.
So with things going on in the world, when the body perceives a threat, it will release cortisol. But cortisol is also released naturally in terms of the hormone in the body to sustain us during the day. And then it decreases as melatonin increases. And melatonin is kind of like our calming, soothing, sleeping hormone that keeps us rested throughout the night. And so they're
Okay.
both kind of you want them when one is coming down, you want the one to come up. And so even in the morning time, as the melatonin starts to come down, it's the cortisol that starts to arise, and that's what wakes
Mm.
us up in the morning. And so
Okay.
I can give you an example with women. So women who, the listeners out there who might be moms, you might have noticed that waking up in the morning, if you have small children, you're usually up ahead of time because your cortisol is heightened. It's activated because you need to get up in order to prepare for the day, not just for yourself, but for your kids. Then you might notice a pattern that will change. So after, because this is what was similar to me, after your kids get older and they move out and you no longer have to wake up and make breakfast and get them dressed and ready for school, you may find that you're still waking up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, but then you don't have all these responsibilities or obligations that you did a few years prior when your kids were younger. So that's also an indication that there's some rebalancing that needs to go on with the hormones.
Okay. Yeah.
Another thing that can happen, and another hormone that's related to that, is adrenaline. And so
Okay.
adrenaline can wake us up. And you might, if you struggle with sleep apnea and the heart has stopped during a period of time, or if you struggle with other conditions and the heart is stopped, or you're engaged in maybe like you do skydiving,
Mm.
the adrenaline is a faster release to keep the body alive. Cortisol is less intense than adrenaline, and it's a slower release. So when something has happened and you have to move quick and fast, think of it like uh, mama bear is protecting her cub right now because there's immediate danger. That's adrenaline. And what will happen is you will feel completely depleted after that because it's a point of exhaustion. You've released it really fast, really quick to keep yourself safe, and then it decreases. So that would be the intensity of the adrenaline hormone in the body. And then the cortisol rises slowly, supposed to in the morning time, trickles down, evens up, goes up a little bit more, and then comes down with nighttime. That's something that helps you kind of wake up in the morning, sustain your energy during the day, and then allow you to rest at nighttime.
Awesome. Yeah. I really appreciate that breakdown. So in a sense, melatonin and what's the other one?
Adrenaline and
Adrenal
cortisol.
cortisol, yeah, excuse me. They kind of
Mhm.
have an inverse relationship. So you definitely want one to be low while the other one is increasing. So that's definitely interesting to know. Um, so you gave a few other suggestions for tools to improve sleep, and you mentioned things like eating proteins such as peas, spinach, kale, broccoli, or sprouts before bed.
Mhm.
Turning off your phone, which is a big one because even for me personally, I spend a lot of time on my devices, especially before bed. So I had to make a conscious effort to at least put them to the side or something like that when it's that time. And keep your room cool and dark definitely is a good one. And create a consistent routine around going to bed, which is something that a lot of people may not do. So I know for me personally, I try to go to bed around 11:30, but ultimately it just comes down to whenever I feel tired. So I wonder if you can kind of speak to,
How do you know
go
when
ahead.
you feel tired? How do you know when you feel tired?
Um, well, I mean, because you feel drowsy and you just kind of the brain sends signals to the body saying that it's time to lay down. And usually for me, it's definitely after after I eat something probably carb heavy, it definitely starts to kick in. But But yeah, I mean, I would say around 11:30 ish. But I definitely do want to get better at turning off devices and things like that. But I wonder if you can kind of speak on eating protein and the benefits of eating protein before bed, and how much time do you recommend in between someone should wait from eating and going to bed?
Oh, that's a great question. And to back up a little bit, you mentioned sometimes if you eat a heavy carb for dinner, you notice that then you'll want to go to sleep. So that is
Yeah,
because of the carb being the carbs in the body using energy, and then you're getting to a depleted point, and so then you're kind of going into a sleeping
yeah,
state.
absolutely.
Another way is tuning into the body. And for you, instead of 11 p.m. as being the default, you could consider just beginning to tune into the body around 8 p.m. and ask your body, is my cortisol going down and is my melatonin going up? And see if you can feel it. Now, when I say this, especially to my listeners who don't know me, may seem this is odd, feeling hormones in the body like cortisol and melatonin. It's an experiment. What do you have to lose? It doesn't cost you anything. It's an idea, it's a frame. There's some possibilities out there of what you might be able to attune to. If you can feel the cortisol going down at 8 and the melatonin starting to arise, in your mind, you're going to start preparing at 8. You may not get to bed until 11 p.m., but at least some of that preparation is going to start happening. um, and then the idea in terms of protein and how protein fits in kind of stabilizing the blood sugar. There's a lot of things in terms of what happens at nighttime with the hormones going up and down, which can awake us. And so when our hormones are dysregulated, even in our youth, even when we're like teenagers, when our hormones are kind of dysregulated in this fashion, it causes us to wake up in the middle of the night. If we're having a scary dream, a terror, or a nightmare, or our mind is kind of constantly agitated and we can't settle it down, then our cortisol is high because it's releasing that stress hormone, making it difficult for the melatonin to arise. You can't have them both high in the body. They are both
Mm.
like complementary at opposing ends. And
Yeah.
so that might be an indication and saying, how can I start monitoring my cortisol? There's kind of two tests you can take. One is from your primary doctor that is usually covered by insurance, and you go to your doctor, your primary care provider, your PCP, and you said, hey, I think something's going on with my stress, can you monitor my cortisol? They will give you a bucket. You will pee in that bucket from 7 a.m. one day to 7 a.m. the next day. You need a complete cycle of urine of a day's worth. Then you take that bucket to the lab and they give you some information. What that will provide you is how much cortisol is being released in a day. That can be helpful, but it's not the ideal test, the best test, or provides the most useful information. So remember early when I talked about our hormones, particularly cortisol, and it goes up high, then it kind of stables, gets a little boost, and then kind of comes down as the melatonin rises. Well,
Yeah.
there's a test that you can take. It's a blood test, and it tests your cortisol. It's a blood and saliva test, I believe, and it tests your cortisol. And so you have to test your cortisol. I think it's through saliva 6 to 7 times in a period of time. So when you first wake up, you put this little strip in your mouth and you like spit on it and you set it down. And then around 10 a.m., a couple of hours later, because you're supposed to have that peak, you take it again. Then around your 3 or 4, where it's supposed to come down, you take it again. Then at nighttime, you take it again. And it gives you a kind of real life, where is my cortisol throughout the day? The other one gives you over the course of the day. And so those are
Okay.
two tests. The second test you have to pay for. The first test is usually free, covered by insurances. And so you can start kind of monitoring where you are in terms of cortisol. You can also test your melatonin and see where you are in terms of the nighttime routine.
Okay.
And so before I get to the protein, because that's so important, let me just finish reading this. Let's see.
Okay.
Lack of sleep can contribute to health problems, including a weak immune system, heart disease, forgetfulness, weight gain, depression, and anxiety, and seasonal affective disorder. And so if you struggle with any of those things, one of the things you should rule out is sleep hygiene. Are you struggling with insomnia? Is your body giving you a message very early on, probably in your 20s, that something is off? And do you wait to take care of and develop good sleep hygiene until you're 40 or 50 or you're older and then you're really struggling with sleep because you can't get any good quality of sleep? Or do you try to make a decision and develop a routine early in life? Um,
Mm.
and so let's see. In my sessions, I ask my patients about the quality and quantity of their sleep. And if they don't have a good quality of sleep and it affects their productivity, you can create a plan to improve your sleeping habits. And then these are where I offered some of the suggestions and tools. So, like I said before, no alcohol or coffee within 4 to 6 hours of going to sleep. And so you want to stop that ideally sooner than later. But what usually supports, at least in the the U.S. world, is after work. Where do people go? Happy hour. People get off
Yeah.
at 5 p.m. They do happy hour, what, for 2 hours, 5 to 7 p.m. They get home, and let's say they get to bed at 11. So if they stop drinking at 8, 9, 10, 11, they've only had 3 hours for their body to process it. Your body's going to process that alcohol in the sleep, and that's going to cause some of the disruptions in sleep. So
Mm.
ideally, if you are engaged in one of those, the habits, then you want to stop at least 6 hours. So I'm not encouraging people to have alcohol for lunch,
Yeah.
but
No.
that would be something maybe like that you would consider. I encourage people to give up alcohol and coffee altogether. Another alternative would be to drink lavender or chamomile tea. You could also buy those teas at pretty much any grocery store. They're very accessible sleepy time teas. And start that early, like around 8 o'clock, as you're starting to notice the changes in the cortisol and the melatonin in the body. As you start to prepare, doing your hygiene, your tea should come along with that. You could also take melatonin. There's a couple of different kind of recommendations on how much. I know people who take a lot of melatonin, and then I know people who stay within recommended values. And in the supplemental environment, that could be 3 to 9 milligrams. If I take melatonin, I'm usually at a 9 or above um, melatonin. And you want to take it at the time that the cortisol is coming down and the melatonin is rising so that you're giving it the ideal boost. That would be the ideal time to take it. Most people don't take it at that time, but that would be the ideal
Mm.
time. Meditate by sitting in silence or listening to something calming. So, you know, if you're on your phone and you have it accessible, 9 o'clock, you could put on some soothing sounds, sounds that have high vibrational energy, and lay in bed and give yourself that part of self care where you're not distracted by TV or other noises or social media. Give yourself, experiment with yourself and see how you do navigating all the struggles that you will have at 9 o'clock when you're trying to bed down listening to some vibrational music and nothing else, because you will have struggles if that is not a part of your routine. um, Journaling on paper and video could also release anxiety. So if you have a lot of racing thoughts, journaling before you go to sleep can get that out, particularly if you're handwriting it. It has a special connection. The handwriting processes has special connections to the subconscious mind. If you can't do that, I don't want to say like then you don't do it. You can do a video diary, whatever is accessible to you. And then protein. I'm always going to encourage eating healthy proteins like peas, spinach, kale, broccoli, and sprouts before bed. Sprouts are one of the highest proteins. But what it does when you bring protein in the body, it complements the cortisol and it helps to keep things more regulated. And so it also regulates one ability to have high levels of anxiety. For example, if you're someone out there who might be struggling with anxiety or something in that realm, like panic attacks, obsessive thoughts, behavior patterns that are repetitive, and it makes it difficult to settle down, then experiment. And what you could experiment are with organic, healthy options of protein. Organic, because we don't want to put more junk in the body to make it difficult for it to process, like we do those things with carbs. And then a healthy protein, because fried chicken and hamburger, like fried hamburgers. I don't even know if they fry hamburgers or hamburger patties. um,
Yeah.
those aren't always healthy protein, right? And
Right.
so
Yeah,
think
for
of the
sure.
quality of food that you put in your body. And when you're putting in these healthy proteins, it's going to, one, stabilize the blood sugar. It's going to give you the amino acids that you need. There's 16 amino acids that are needed in the body. And it's
Mm,
going to help complement the cortisone. And then some additional proteins like turkey, an organic turkey grilled, might releases a amino acid called tryptophan. And that also, that
mm,
particular amino acid works well with melatonin by increasing it naturally in the body. And so know like protein can help contribute it to you. So one thing I, you know, could suggest to people who are struggling with those things of anxiety, like panic attacks and things like that, is always keep a healthy protein available. So let's say you know that you're prone to have panic attacks when you're driving. Maybe you had just got in a car accident. Maybe you are not wanting to get therapy, but you're just wanting to get help. One, always consult with a medical provider because this isn't medical advice. One of the things you could consider, as well, as long as, in addition to working with a mental health provider that is qualified, is having protein that is accessible. Because if you have protein in the body, your panic attack can't get to 10. It can reside around a 7 or 8, but the level of intensity, it won't get there, but it'll
mm.
still be there, which is an indication that the body is trying to talk to you to get you to listen, to try to get some help and support. So it doesn't have to work that hard. So know that if you eat protein, it's really good with kids when they're struggling with anxiety. I always recommend kids, if they have big tests coming up like the SATs or other kind of standardized testing, or they're worried about like finals, things like that, making for sure that you're giving them a healthy protein in the morning before they go to school. Because usually by the time they get to school, everything is junk. Rarely do I see schools provide healthy proteins, especially in an organic form.
Yeah, that is very true. And I just want to quickly jump in and let people know that protein. There's a misconception about protein. Definitely being pushed by the meat industry that certain meats are very high in protein, and that protein is something that is necessary for nutrition. And although that may be true, you definitely can get higher concentrations of protein in things like vegetables, because all protein is, like you said before, is a buildup of those amino acids. So once you have that, that really is the basis for all proteins. And yeah, I think that's important. I think that's great how you kind of laid out the foundation. People can kind of take that and apply what they think will work for them in their own life. And I'm sure you'll only see benefits from implementing a lot of these strategies. There really is no downside to a lot of these practices. So I would encourage people to try at least one of them. And who knows, you may end up trying a few more after you see results.
I like the idea that you mentioned the amino acids, because there's amino acids that our body can make, And then there are like these other non-essential amino acids that we have to give the body that it really loves to help it function in an optimal way. And
Yeah.
so even if you are exploring having an all meat diet, you still may not be getting those essential amino acids. And you might explore, because I do nutrition consultations where people will come to me, maybe 3 to 5 sessions, and I will talk about their diet and ways to move them so that they're getting what they need nutritionally in the body to start building up the body, to help the body cleanse and detoxify from all the junk that has occurred prior. And a lot of people will come and say that they're vegan, and I'll say, well, tell me about your diet. And it's usually like fast food, French fries. But I mean, if you're
Yeah.
vegan, the big bulk of your diet should be vegetables, not
Right.
potatoes, although those are considered root vegetables, but they're also fried. And then they're also fried probably in
And
things that
salt.
are
Yeah.
salt and butters and lards and stuff that probably isn't the best. And so we talk about how that attraction to a vegan lifestyle can bring you to health, but then what are some other really good kind of alternatives like yucca fries? And if you've
Hmm.
ever kind of experimented, those are a little bit sweet and a little bit different than sweet potatoes. So kind of thinking about what could be some other alternatives if someone was interested in doing a nutritional consultation and really wanting to improve their physical health. um, Another thing along with that, just to continue on some of the recommendations, and you kind of attested to the difficulty with turning the phone off. So turning the
Yeah.
phone off and putting it in another room. Um, I practiced that when my kids became adults. I think it is difficult when your kids are younger, especially if they're teenagers, because you want a phone maybe accessible if they're out, and you're kind of worried about them, or you would feel a little bit calmer when they're home and safe and kind of knowing that. So that may have to be one that you kind of negotiate, or maybe you negotiate it in different ways. So I turn my phone off, and then there's like 1 or 2 people who can get through to me in case of an emergency. And really, it's 1 or 2 people. It's no more than a list of that. And so at 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., there's no phone calls or disruptions that come to my phone, even if I'm not asleep. And so, thinking about your lifestyle, think about what is your voice and how you want to show up. And do you want to be accessible all of the time? Or do you want to set some limits so that you know that you are dedicating specific time to your self care? Because once that ping starts, once that ring goes on, or you hear that particular music because you've attached it to a ringtone, that draws you back in, and knowing that maybe
Mm.
you have some freedom to make a different choice and can control that. Keeping the room cool and dark. Now, I like a dark room, but the cool part has always been a struggle. And a lot of that does also go back to the body temperature. Our body temperature should be around 97. They should fluctuate 1 or 2 kind of degrees, depending on different things that can be occurring inside of the body. And so when your body is running too hot and when your body is running too cold, then that's an indication that something is going on and worth exploring how to resolve it, which means going beyond just talking to your primary care doctor and them saying to you, everything looks okay, you're fine, your blood tests are normal. If your body is too cold or your body is too hot, you got to figure out what's going on because the body is talking to you. And I wanted to repeat that because that's how important it is. And those are the messages that usually when people arrive in my office, they've already been to the doctor. The doctor has already said that they're okay, but they're still having symptoms. With the quality of the noise, some people can't sleep in silence. They will report it's difficult to sleep in silence. I need a fan on. I need some sort of noise. What I would want you to explore with a mental health provider is whether or not this is a trauma response. Because
Mm.
in my experience, I have seen people who cannot sleep in silence, cannot slow the mind down because of the constant agitation. It's a reactivity, and it's a maybe a byproduct of something in terms of a trauma situation. So I'm not diagnosing here, but I am encouraging someone who can't sleep where it is dark and where it is cool, that those are indications of further investigation. Um,
Yeah.
and then I think the last part, and we kind of covered, was really to just kind of have that routine before going to bed. And then it kind of just ends in this little segment by, besides getting adequate sleep, two things that you can improve health are practicing good hygiene and getting massages, which is body work. To see the overall picture and work together and work towards wellness, I discussed environmental issues with clients, including safety, stability, and healthy habits, encouraging them to decrease toxins, chemicals, and pesticides while addressing poor quality water and food choices are helpful. This is a very small paragraph, but this paragraph has probably the most
Impact.
useful
Yeah.
motivational information in it, that if I were to talk about it, it could be overwhelming, especially if this is a new idea. Um, and so I will just leave it at the practice of good hygiene and doing something in terms of body work. What would be one thing that you say that you practice or are willing to practice in terms of good hygiene and in terms of something to do with the physical body structure?
Yeah. So definitely believe exercise is important. Of course, you have oral hygiene, things like brushing your teeth and flossing on a regular basis. Um, and just regular things like making sure you have, deodorant, lotion or whatever the case may be, and then just showering regularly. Now, I don't believe people necessarily have to shower every day. Especially if you live in a dry climate, you may suffer from some dryness of skin. But I would say every at least day or two would be recommended. But of course, it just goes by a case by case basis for sure. But I would definitely start with those.
And so I like the hygiene, kind of putting something that would lubricate the skin on the body. And like I said, that small paragraph is a lot. And so when we talk about lotions, I'm going to say ban it. Ban lotions,
Mm.
ban makeup, ban anything that you're applying to the skin that is not natural from the skin. So as you can see, I do have makeup on. All of my products are organic and naturally formulated. They're more expensive and they're not as accessible as like going to
Like
cosmetics
Sephora.
or so, yeah, like a
Yeah.
Sephora or something. But they are going to not add more toxicity to the body because the skin is the biggest organ. So be mindful what you put on it. Because if you're putting lotions and creams, you're clogging up the pores and putting more toxicity. And so the skin can't breathe. It can't get, we want the toxins to go from inside of the body out of the body. Other things are oil. So people use coconut oil and applying it to the skin. I use an olive oil that I've created into a salve and I apply it to the skin. I actually don't even, I only apply it to the face. I don't need lotion. I think this is a misconception. I both operate in dry and cold climates. I rarely apply lotion on my skin. If I feel that my skin is becoming a little dry in a particular area, one, it's a sign that something internally is drying up. So I may need more water. I may need more fluids in the body. So I want you to know it's possible to live outside in a world in very similar clients where we're not using lotions. But if I did need something, I would use an oil of some
Mm.
sort to put on my body. And I might even, if I needed it to be a little bit, want to bring blood in a particular area. So I might put ginseng in it or turmeric if I wanted a little inflammation and I would just kind of rub it in it and apply it on the skin where it needed to go. So know that there are other alternatives. With deodorant, Absolutely no, unless it's aluminum free, particularly for
Right.
women. Deodorant has a long history and lots of research related to breast cancer. So I have not used deodorant in over probably 5 years, if not more than that. You've been physically in my presence. People are physically in my presence and have never mentioned a body odor from me. There are things in terms, remember, I sweat every day because I do a sauna or heat or work out. So as I sweat, I'm getting the toxins out of my body. I also eat garlic. If it's not a fermented garlic, it's a raw garlic. And so that's also what working to get the toxins out of the body. And if you're around me, you don't smell the garlic and you don't smell the body odor. Body odor is a sign that something in the body is toxic and trying to get out of the body. So it should encourage you to work out more or to sweat more or rethink what you're putting in the body. So if you start going, you mentioned working out, if you start going to the gym and you're sweating and you notice an odor, keep doing it. If the odor continues, it's something in your digestive. You might need a digestive cleanse. You might need to add some enzymes into the body. But eventually, as you start clearing up the diet and it's breaking down this junk and getting it out, eventually you'll get to a point where you're sweating, dripping sweat, and there's no odor. That is a good place to be at. That is ideal. That tells you that you are listening to your body because your body has sent you some messages. And I say this because it's so important. I do talk about how the body gives us messages very early on in life. And I think I shared some examples of what messages our body could give us. And in our 20s and our 30s, how we sometimes ignore these messages, dismiss it, get too caught up in the world, care for everybody else, raise everybody's other kids, and participate in the world and in life, and yet we're neglecting us. That is not self-care. Self-care is slowing down, recognizing that, oh, I do feel a little different in the morning because I feel my cortisol rising. Is this what Tonya was talking about? Oh, is this what melatonin feels like as it starts to rise in the body? Oh, if I change my diet, now I'm sweating and I don't have this odor. Um,
Yeah.
so these are just little things to do, little tools and things to consider, and knowing that you should always work with someone who is well educated, well informed, that you have a trusting relationship, that is a professional and educated about this information.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very vital that you brought that up. And that's why we need things like this book. We need more things like this in society because a lot of times people are so busy worried about other people and what they have going on. They spend very little time with themselves and realizing what works for them and what's good for them. And you can't help anybody until you learn to help yourself first. So I definitely think that's a very, very important place for people to start is with themselves. And that's why I appreciate you for sharing this information with us. And before we wrap, is there any information you want to leave the audience with?
Just improving our sleeping habits in terms of short-term care or in terms of short-term benefits. You're going to have an increase in your cognitive ability. You're going to be able to regulate your mood better. Definitely an increase in energy. Your immune system's going to be stronger. So even if you were to test your white blood cells before, you would start to work on improving your sleep because those are our immune cells, and then test them after. You should see improvements in that area. Long-term benefits, particularly for women, cardiovascular health. It will cut down on your risk associated with high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, things like that. It helps regulate your emotions. The longer the time that you're sleeping, you're balancing things out and your weight can be maintained. And so usually sometimes that can be a motivation for individuals to have that stability, mental health stability, cognitive preservation. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I'll just leave you with those things in terms of benefits, really having a good quality and quantity of sleep.
Awesome. Awesome. A lot of great information. I hope people appreciate this episode. If you haven't already, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We'll have more episodes coming out in the future. And that is all the time we have for today. If you don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button once again, and we will be back for another episode next week of going over the Heal Thy Mind book in our Trauma and Social Work podcast. And with that being said, thanks for tuning in. Everyone have a great day, and bye-bye.
Bye. Wraps up another episode. I hope today's discussion provided clarity and tools you can use in your daily life. If you're ready to take the next step in the healing journey, I'd love to connect. Head over to my website to schedule a free 15-minute consultation. It is a great opportunity to ask questions and see how we can work together. And while you're there, download my complimentary workbook designed to help you reflect, grow, and move towards mental wellness, happiness, and success. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time. The Rhythm of Healing, the Octaves Method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make, in strength and in stillness our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The Octaves Method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.